No,
Yep. Hey, everybody. This is Michael Goldberg, and welcome to the LinkedIn Live Lunch Hour. And we have got a great guest today. If you haven't heard of Lou Adler, you've been literally living under a rock. He's all over LinkedIn. This is I consider him to be one of the godfathers of recruiting in there, and he's been doing it for an incredible amount of time. He has great courses that he offers. He does his big product is performance based hiring, but he's got some other cool things that we're going to be talking about as it relates to diversity hiring coming up. And so today, basically, Lou and I. And looking him up, it's Lou Adler, Adler. So today, Lou and I are going to be speaking about recruiting and how's recruiting doing during COVID, and what are the talent organizations? What should they be doing now versus waiting until the rebound eventually does come? What should those companies be doing? But before we begin the conversation, Lou, I'd like for you to say hello to everybody and definitely tell us a little bit about your background and how Adler Concepts helps organizations in the talent acquisition space.
Yeah, great. Hi, everyone. This is Lou Adler. Delighted to be with you today. And with Michael, thank you very much for inviting me. When you said I was a godfather of recruiting, it reminded me of I guess I would call it a sad story, because I had been recruiting I started in 1978 as a recruiter, so I've been around a long time. 10 years prior to that, I actually didn't start as a recruiter. I was running a little manufacturing company, and I hated the group president, so I quit, and I said, I'll become a recruiter and find another job. But it turned out that recruiting was not dramatically different than manufacturing and managing processes. So I'd done that for a while, but you say the godfather component, and this had to be 2005. So I had been recruiting for 25 years then, and I kind of got out of it and started doing training. But a very nice woman called me. She was at PricewaterhouseCoopers. She said she was a 3-year senior leaving, and she said, I understand that you can help me find a job in accounting management or a controller spot in the entertainment industry, I had done that for 10 years, but I would say that was from 1985 to 95. And I said to her, I don't remember her name, but I said, and she was a very nice person and clearly a very capable person. I said, but how did you get my name? I don't do that anymore. She said, oh, you placed my grandfather. And I said, oh, God. And I went home and cried. I know that I told my wife, when I'm getting referrals from grandchildren, I know that I'm a little too old for this. Turned out that her grandfather, true, I did know him. I did not place him. He was a client of mine, but nonetheless, that was to say, okay, I can't do this anymore. But now I go fast forward from 1978 to today, which was your question. I've been through lots of downturns. This is probably, in terms of hiring, the worst, without question. Hard to find jobs for candidates, hard to find recruiters playing the middleman role has changed. And I think changed we will get back. So it's 3 to 6 months, things will get better. I think the role of recruiting is going to fundamentally change. I think in a very positive way. I think it's been too easy for candidates to apply and too easy for companies to look at job postings and say that's the solution. So I think a lot of changes are taking place here. I think they'll be fundamental. I think they'll be powerful, but so we can get into those. But I truly think we're going through a time warp, so to speak, of what's going to happen. It's going to be combining the old and the new and more high touch. So I think there are some fundamental changes going on, and happy to chat with you, Michael, about those.
Definitely. So we got a big contingency on LinkedIn. I don't know if you have your phone up.
That was a challenge you gave to me. I didn't know I could do a technical challenge without my glasses. So I'm the godfather of recruiting, and I've got every single tech. And let's just say, as a godfather, I was the first recruiter in the world, the first one to have a database of candidates. It was on a Radio Shack Trash 80 computer in 1980. It was I didn't even have a disk in it. It didn't have a 60 or 48K RAM. It was a tape recorder. And to load 70 candidates into tape recorder took probably about 15 minutes to load 80 candidates into the system. But I developed a database that did it. But I can't find where we are on this one, Michael. So I apologize for that.
No worries. But we got a lot of people that are signed in.
I don't need to.
We got about 25. We got about 25 people on the LinkedIn side. Several people kind of bouncing back and forth between LinkedIn and YouTube. But everybody, it looks like everybody. Everybody's from Texas, Lou. We got a big Texas contingency here. So
Well, they're the worst people in the world. I mean, that's a different country.
nice.
Texas, so.
Well, no, wait a minute. I got somebody from Alaska.
Well,
Look at
that's
that. Chris
good.
Velasquez, you win the distance award for tuning in. Thank you very much. So, but well, let's go and dive in. So, really from your vantage point, Lou, what is the current state of talent acquisition, otherwise known as recruiting, for those that aren't in TA? And what have you been seeing or hearing out there from the organizations, whether it be your clients, would-be clients across the country, since the start of the pandemic, about what they're having a hard time with, what's going well, what's not? Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I sure can. Well, let me just say this. We actually have two situations taking place right now. Situation one is the COVID crisis and unemployment and companies cutting back. So that's a huge problem in and of itself. On top of that, you have the Black Lives Matter situation, which makes it even more challenging, and the need for companies to at least contend they want to have more diversity hiring as part of their process. So you got those two big challenges taking place concurrently. If I had to take away the diversity component, I would say what I'm seeing is a trend for hiring managers to do it themselves. In fact, it just happened. I'm working with, and I don't do search anymore, but I help companies do. What I do is I overlay and manage search projects for companies, and using my methodology called performance-based hiring. But I've seen hiring managers, and we just had a case in point for a VP marketing, small company growing fast. We identified 7 candidates who were really all strong candidates. In this case, they're all diverse candidates, but that's the second layer. I reached out to all 7, got 3 of them, and called me that afternoon. Literally, I took the assignment in the morning, had candidates that afternoon, or names. We had names of candidates that afternoon. I reached out to them, all of them, none of them were looking for jobs, or I didn't know that they were or not. I didn't make that a condition. 3 of them contacted me and said, I'm happy to chat. The 2 best ones, though, I wanted the president to talk to. I said, Bill, would you please email these 2 people? I gave him the email address. I said, just email them and say you'd like to talk to them. Well, 2 of the others called them right back. So here, out of 7 candidates, we got 5 to talk to us within 48 hours and 24 hours. But it was the hiring manager doing the work, not doing the work. I suggest he did the work. It was his name. The reaction is, hey, I'd just like to talk to you about a couple of spots we have. So that to me was, and I've seen this trend before. I mean, I know about it. It actually experienced it 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. It's an interesting trend, which says, okay, maybe recruiters are not going to be around 2 years or when it comes back. I don't believe that to be totally true, but it does say that recruiters better upscale their skills to take advantage of what's happening here. You don't need lots of candidates. You have to identify them. You have to contact them. You have to talk to them. And if you're not a recruiter, most companies have 2 steps to that process: finding names of people, and other than talking to people and recruiting them. I'm going to contend that sourcing component and the talking to and converting that person into an interested candidate and engaging me with the hiring manager is all going to be done by one person. You just don't need a lot of candidates. You don't need to be an expert in Boolean. LinkedIn Recruiter, you can find anybody. You don't even need a LinkedIn Recruiter. Just when we have a little small course that we show people how to X-ray LinkedIn site with some names, and you can get candidates in hours, maybe less, just so simply. So, and then the matter is, let's talk to them and let's engage them in a conversation. So that's the big trend. I see it compressing the process. Hiring manager, do it yourself. Sorry, Michael, for being a little too long there.
No. It's actually fascinating. So, what do you think are the key skills? Like, and I'm in agreement with you. I personally believe that recruiters and sourcers, it's almost like we created this wall between the recruiters and sourcers, and the sources are bitching about the recruiters and vice versa on the other side. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but to me, I agree with you. I think recruiters need to be recruiters and sourcers. You can't, especially for those companies that don't have large sourcing departments, or even hell, even one sourcer is not going to do the trick. But I think name generation there is key, but also effective relationship building is a part of that. So do you feel like besides where does the relationship side stand? Because the reason why I ask that is, my last few posts through what I've been doing over the last week, it's really been focused on candidate experience, and recruiters and HR are just getting jumped on. They're just getting jumped on. And so, I think relationship building is a big part of that recruiting skill, right? Because most of us, we fall into recruiting, and some people shouldn't be in recruiting at all. And so, what are some of the key skill sets that recruiters of the future are going to need to have? And when I say future, like the next 6 months to a year.
Right. Well, let me kind of I'll give a story yesterday because it happened yesterday. This spot that I'm working with a company on, helping them, my firm is doing the project management. I interviewed a exceptional VP marketing, and part of the role was demand generation, which is this is the analogy of sales. And I asked her, I said, tell me about what you guys do in your department. And it was clear. She said, well, our whole focus, we develop campaigns at the one level is to identify potential clients. But we don't just give those potential clients to the sales reps. We actually meet these people, qualify them, talk to them, get them agreed that they will be open to talk a serious conversation with the sales rep. So they pre-qualify all their sales leads and they give them to the sales rep. They actually set up the meeting with the sales rep. Well, to me, I think that's a pretty big trend that's happened in the last 10 years in marketing. It's don't just throw a lead over the wall to the sales team and then the sales team complains to the marketing team, you didn't give me a good lead. You gave me all these leads, but none of them turned in. And I think the same thing is true in recruiting. I think recruiting's 10 years behind sales and marketing. So it's a recruiter. Sourcing is just a name. Anybody, and people spend so much money. Oh, it's so cool to get names. Now you call up the phone and you can get 10. I mean, literally for this VP marketing spot, took no more than 3 hours to identify great people. 3 hours. It's not hard. What's hard is getting to talk to you and convincing them to talk to the hiring manager about moving. So when you look at it, a good recruiter, anybody can source, but not everyone can be a good recruiter. Talking with people, knowing the job, convincing the person it's worth a career move, setting the meeting up with the hiring manager. That's the hard work. And anybody thinks sourcing is the easy part now. I mean, literally LinkedIn recruiter with a little bit of Boolean, you can be an expert sourcer, but you got to contact these people. You got to convince them this job's a career move. You got to set the stage. You got to start closing the deal on the first contact. And this is where I see sales and marketing has been 10 years ago. I think recruiting hasn't even caught up yet. Well, that's not totally true. Certain recruiters know it. That's the key issue. But I think corporations haven't bought into the concept that, hey, this is a yield business, maximizing process from the name of the top of the funnel to the close rate. And I think those are the things that I see changing pretty quickly. And to me, I don't know if I call it the recruiting of the future. It's good recruiting 101 or 201, whatever it may be. But right. If recruiters don't jump to that thing, they're going to be dislocated. Hiring managers can do it themselves. They don't need to pay recruiters to do anybody's work.
Yeah, and they'll just have these skeleton HR departments just to keep them legal, to make sure they don't do anything, different. So let's talk about diversity hiring. Obviously, it's become a huge topic. And, you and I were talking before this. And, of course, I was looking at your website, and I see you put together really, I guess you would call it a cohort, but diversity hiring by design. So can you first tell us, in your opinion, if HR or talent acquisition is even up for this challenge? So, there are good folks like you that are putting out great content. There are other people that I've talked to, whether it be a gentleman by the name of Andrew Guy or Tara Fioriani, who I had on the show last week. Are companies up for the challenge of let's say they go through your training? So I want you to tell us a little bit about what that training is going to look like. So for the recruiters that are on board or listening, and then are we even ready are companies ready? We were kind of talking about this. So I'd like for you to get some good points.
Well, let me say this question. A lot of people and I think most companies will talk the talk that the diversity hiring is important. Doing it is a little bit more complicated. If anybody goes to winwinhiring.com or www.winwinhiring.com, sometimes you got to put the www in before because of the way the website's designed.
Right.
You'll see a course on diversity hiring for hiring managers. Most hiring managers agree, hey, this would actually work. But the key to make it work, so let me kind of is since day one, since I've been a recruiter, since my background is manufacturing and engineering, I never use the job description to list skills. I always say, what does a person need to do to be successful? Because most job descriptions aren't job descriptions, they're person descriptions. So I say, okay, what does the person need to do? Put the person description apart, tell me what they got to do. So I remember my first assignment 40 plus years ago was walking through a manufacturing plant, and I walked through dozens of them, so pretty comfortable doing that. And we said, okay, well, the person's got to turn around the plant. So we went to all the major work sites, and we found out the 5 or 6 things that had made major change. We said, well, find a person who can do that. I then talked to, and I've been doing that for 40 plus years, define the work as a series of performance objectives. It turns out that that's perfectly legal. I talked to the number 1 labor attorney in the country. He said, that's actually better than skills. Skills might look objective, but they're actually subjective because they're not scientific. But if the person's got to launch a new product line in 6 months, it doesn't matter if they're black or white, green or yellow, old or young, they can do it. So then it's the work determines the skills don't determine the work. So that is a critical step. Hiring managers, once they see it, oh, I agree with that. Interviewing, you got to interview candidates in an unbiased fashion.
Right.
But so the course that we have there on the site actually works, but you got to do it. And that's the issue and you don't so part of it is hiring the right people. I mean, you got to find a diverse candidate, you got to hire the right candidates, you got to assess them properly. But as important, and maybe more important, is they have to be successful after they're hired. And hiring managers don't want to take the risk of, well, I know I want to do it, but now I'm responsible if the person doesn't succeed. So I don't want to take the risk. The company, and that I think is a real stumbling block. If the company doesn't want to take some risk for hiring managers to hire diverse candidates, the hiring manager will make the decision. I mean, right there at that decision, me assuming I'm not talking for me, I'm talking hiring manager in general. He said, I am unbiased. I will hire a diverse candidate, but I have to then be the one responsible to ensure that that person is capable. And that risk shouldn't be done solely by that hiring manager. So unless you can mitigate that risk, it won't work. And then you have to have full inclusion after the hire. The culture has to be supported. But that's why if you define the job as a series of performance objectives, at least you clarify expectations up front. Hire people can do that work and then support the person. So that's why the talk is important. Our process actually works, but it requires a lot of hand-holding and controls while you do it. And that to me is the big challenge. And I told you earlier, I'm an old guy. I can retire. I want to try to solve this problem. I don't know that I can. It is a lot of moving parts, but that's my personal commitment. Hey, I'm not going to retire until I at least give it another real shot because it's too important to not do. That's the other issue. But can it be done? I'm a little cynical. I am cynical. I just see there's too many parts.
Are you cynical or are you a realist? I think I'm with you. It's interesting because we've seen this before. Right? When OFCCP came out with all these regulations about diversity hiring and hiring women and military hiring, in the last, 10, 15 years?
Well, 20 years ago, it came
20
out.
years, maybe it's 20 now, but it is hard because, to your point, you've got to have everybody drinking this from the same bucket, right? From the executives down to the lower levels. To me, and I've said this a few times on the show, is just because you have a focus group or a specialty group, I think that creates even more diversity and segregation within organizations. So, for people that say, oh, well, we'll just do a Black diversity group or we'll do a Hispanic diversity group. Oh, that's great. But now are you going to welcome in people that are not the same color, or maybe from the LGBTQ community, or from the trans community. Well, that's part of it, but
All right, not the
just anybody different can walk in. As a white man, could I walk in to that, or would I get these looks of why are you here, right? So I'm with you. I'd like to think that we could solve for X, but I think it's more of a mindset versus training.
I think the mindset is important, and I don't think the training is critical. But in my mind, the problem exists on how job descriptions are defined.
True.
You cannot use a skills-based job description that has lists of skills, experience, competencies, and must-have requirements. That to me is, and then post these boring jobs and expect to get good people to sign in. And that's the issue. And I actually talked to the head of the OFCCP when it first started. The lawyer I talked to last week, who's written a white paper for my book, is the co-chair of the OFCCP practice at Littler Mendelson, the number one labor firm in the country.
Right.
So I'm dealing with this, and I say, why do we allow people to write job descriptions that list skills? That's anti-diversity to begin with, because diverse candidates have a different mix of skills and experience. So right away, you've said, no, you got to have this.
Exactly.
And to me, if you don't break that bottleneck by saying, no, we no longer will post skills and experience-based job descriptions. We have to post performance-based job descriptions. If you don't make that fundamental change, nothing will change. Now, all those other issues you talked about are there, but at the core level of how a hiring manager and a candidate come together, it's with that job description. And if that's not thrown away and job postings aren't thrown away, nothing will change. So to me, and that's a huge shift. And HR says, no, we have to do it, because corporate lawyers say they have to do it. I said, well, no, if you talk to my corporate lawyers, who's a better lawyer, and because he tells you what to say, you got to listen to what he says, and he'll tell you the job descriptions are the problem, not the solution. So that's where I'm cynical. I'm not necessarily a realist. I'm cynical.
Yeah. No, and look, since I have known you, since I've been doing like full-time focus on recruiting, which is 19 years, 20 years now. That's been your mission. That's been the mission of your company, is to change the way you tell people about those opportunities and put it into action. And so I think everyone should go check out that performance-based hiring solution that you guys offer do you offer it to companies and individuals, or agencies, or just is it mostly for corporate?
Well, recruiters? We do have the site that I mentioned, winwinhiring.com, is a business to consumer site. So that's a self-paced learning platform where any hiring manager, recruiter, candidate, we have a free course for candidates on there. They can learn it on their own. Pretty hands-off. That's our consumer platform. For corporations, we have a much more industrial learning platform and more train-to-trainer options. So we offer to anybody. Then we have a lot of people on the platform who pay. You can learn a class in a month. It's $20, $30, $40 a month for most programs. So one program, I mean, you can get there's a lot of stuff it's like an automated book almost, but so it's pretty cool from that standpoint. So we train a lot of people, but to really make it work at the organization, and you said, Michael, the organization has to be committed from top down. They've got to change the way they hire, they change the way they recruit, and as important, they got to change the way they onboard and ensure that the hiring manager and the candidate together are successful. And that's a big challenge. And I don't think people I think you said, they have these focus groups. That ain't going to work. You got to get in there and do stuff. I mean, that's my background is engineering. It's not talking. Hey, you got to build a product. So I give this, and I don't know if this is a relevant story, but I'll make it relevant. My first engineering job in 1964, I went to an engineering school upstate New York. The first course I had was engineering design. And the prof came in there and he showed a picture of a bridge going across the St. Lawrence Seaway. And he zoomed in on it, and you could see that the bridge didn't come together exactly from the north and the south side. And it was like off 6 inches. And this was when they rebuilt it. But And he said, in this course, you'll learn that will never happen to you ever. So the idea is you got to get it right. And you got to start with it right. But if you start with it wrong and hope for the best, and that's why I say generic competency models they've got too many false positives and false negatives. So you can't use statistics to design something that affects human nature, at least in my mind. And until those things change, that's why I'm 40 years of being a cynic. I'm going to stay being a cynic.
There you go. Well, we've got some good questions. One is from Lisa McDougall. She says, have you helped companies implement a recruiting sales model?
Yes. Lisa, the answer is yes.
That's the basis of isn't that the basis of a lot of what you do?
Well, part of it is you got to define it. It's just like in sales. So let me do this, Lisa. How can you possibly no company would ever let a sales rep sell their product without understanding the product line? I mean, they go through some training on here's the product line. They go to the client, they do discovery, they figure out, hey, how our product fits your solution. Well, that is the same model you should have in hiring. How can a recruiter go out to a candidate and affect that candidate's life when the candidate says, can you tell me a little bit about the job? And say, no, it's an awesome job, and we're looking a lot for people like this, and they sell smoke and mirrors. So yeah, I think at one level, the recruiter has to understand the job. They have to understand the discovery process. So when I talk to candidates, if I was talking to Lisa, I say, hey, Lisa, would you be open to a discussion if the job represented a good career move? And Lisa might say, well, what's a career move? I said, well, I got to give you at least a 30% non-monetary increase. And we hire for the anniversary date, not the start date. And yes, I know what you get on the start date's important, but what's more important is what you're going to be doing and becoming if you're successful. Job stretch, job mix, job satisfaction, and job growth. Let's have a conversation to see if this job that I have offers those kind of things. So yes, I would say our performance-based hiring duplicates the sales process for a complex product with two buyers, the hiring manager and the candidate's family, and the hiring manager's advisors. So it's a complicated process, but it starts out with knowing the job, conducting an unbiased interview, and saying, here's why we believe this job is a career move. And unfortunately, too many candidates accept jobs for what they get on a start date. Now we're going to be doing in year one and beyond.
But don't you think? I didn't hear that recruiters are part of that equation, because recruiters. Look, we've all bypassed unintentionally a great candidate, but shouldn't they be involved as much in the sales process?
Well, they are.
The hiring manager.
No, I think this recruiter. I agree with you 100%, Michael. I think the recruiter is the sales rep. The sales rep for the candidate and the sales rep for the candidate. They really have two buyers, and they got to bring those together. So I totally 100%. That to me is where recruiting really is, and it's a complicated process. The sourcing piece, I don't think is complicated. You can take we have a 30-minute class on sourcing, and it's $20. And you can learn it. You can learn everything you need to know to X-ray a LinkedIn site and start talking to people. We have another course that's about the same price, but how do you get them on the phone? That's the hard part, is getting them on the phone and talking with them and convince and doing the actual work of what Lisa talks about, the sales model. And I believe that recruiters have to do it.
Absolutely. So this is a fairly long question, so it's going to block both of our faces. It says, just a thought, instead of diversity hiring, how about getting rid of the exclusion that exists by asking for graduation year, sexual preference, gender at birth, questions on job applications? We're all human beings. We should be hired on our ability, not our race, age, gender, sexual preference, etc. Sure, we can elect to not select, but how does this impact the algorithm selection process?
Well, Joanne, I'm not sure I actually understand your question, but maybe can you put it back up there, Michael, so I can kind of
So the way while you're reading through it again, I think what I'm hearing her say is, how do we fix the algorithm? Well, first off, to her first point about having anything on an application, I mean, Lou, I've applied to jobs where I've seen they're asking the year I graduated college. Well, okay, if everybody wants to know, I graduated.
Okay, so let me get cut to the chase here. So what I do is I don't look at any of those things, and this is the part that I asked about David Goldstein, the lawyer that I was mentioning, and you can look up him on LinkedIn. You'll see he's a very credible guy. I think he's actually spoken in front of the Supreme Court, but I can't be positive about that. When I do a job description, I don't have candidates fill in applications. To me, that's too serious a step. I just say, hey, we're looking for someone who can accomplish these tasks, A, B, and C. If you can accomplish that task, give me a quick description of what you've accomplished that's related. We'll see if one of our job represents that. So I bypass all of that stuff. And I've asked David, I call that the two-step. Hey, I just want to have a conversation with the person about potential jobs. It's perfectly legal. So I bypass the application. I don't bypass it. I have a pre-application process to have a candidate tell me about the work that they've done that's related to what I've needed. So then I think that woman's question would go to that step is, yeah, let's make it totally colorblind. If you can do this work, you deserve the job. I don't care if you're black or white, green or yellow, gay or not, how old you are, whether you're physically challenged. Hey, if you can do this work, you deserve the job. And that's what I got David Goldstein to do in his white paper. And if you go to, if you go to the site winwinhiring.com, you'll see in the free preview class, we have his white paper there you can download. So, but that basically accommodates that issue. Sorry, Michael, but I got the issue after I read it 3 times.
No, that's good. I'm glad you answered. So here's one from Nick Livingston, who I believe we both know.
I know Nick. How did you find it, Nick? Hi, Nick.
Hello, Nick. So why do you think so much focus has been on sourcing tech versus talking tech when talking, pitching, selling is the hard stuff?
I think I know what Nick means, but I'm not positive. So let me kind of make a general statement, which might answer the question, but then it'll answer the question I wanted Nick to ask. I make the statement that HR tech, the best HR tech can do is help companies find the best of the bottom half. And the reason I say that is people who have all the skills, experiences, they're not the best people. They're the average people. The best people can do twice as much work with half as much experience. So so if you look at HR tech saying, okay, you have to have all these skills, all these experience, all these competencies. Well, if you've had 10 years experience in doing 10 years of work, you're average. I would rather have somebody who's got 5 years worth of work and do 20 years worth of work. I remember talking with somebody who's making the first chip for the Apple iPhone 12 years ago. And they said, you got to have 10 years experience in chip design, little microcircuits. I said, what if I found someone who could do it in 5 years and didn't have a PhD? And he's an exceptional person because he's brilliant. Oh, I'd see that person. I said, no, you can't. I said, must have 10 years and a PhD. I didn't know
the job description, right?
But the hiring manager says, oh my God, of course. I mean, it was why people. So I don't know if that's your question, Nick, but the idea is you got to get off of old time thinking. And sourcing tech is old line thinking. You don't need a bunch of skills and experience. 1 or 2 skills. What I call some achievement terms, been assigned to big projects, you got an award for something, you're in the game. And I think you just got to rethink, how do you find time? And you got to then, that other question about just have a conversation. Don't fill in the application. A good person's not going to fill in the application. I'll say this, if you fill in the application, you're at best average. I know that's stupid as heck. And then don't complain when you push the button, filled in the application, and didn't respond.
Right.
It was too easy to apply. I just say throw away job descriptions, throw away the application button, and rethink how you do this.
I think it's easier just to pick up the phone and call the person and have the relationships. But a lot of people that are watching here are job seekers right now. And there's obviously some vendors and there are some recruiters on, but the big thing is communication and getting back to people. And it's very frustrating for me. I mean, you and I come from the old school, right? So
I come from the real old school.
I come from the old school where picking up the phone and having a conversation, calling back whoever called you, having real conversations with real people about their skill sets and about their successes and accomplishments is to me what it's all about, rather than having to fill out a dumb application it's not going to tell you anything different than the freaking resume told me. Right.
Okay, let me kind of address that issue because I know we don't have that much time left.
Right.
I have an article on LinkedIn and it's something called Hack a Job, 15 ways to hack a job. So you have to look up Adler and hack. I think you'll find it. But the basic idea is if you see a job that you think you're perfectly qualified for, do not push the apply button because you will not get seen. 1 in 100, 5 chances in 100 you'll get interviewed, and 1 in 100 you'll get the job. So the statistics over 300 million, that's what it shows. It's a waste of time, which means 95 people who apply shouldn't have applied to begin with. However, if you see that job posting, you think you're competent, I would go on LinkedIn, find the vice president of that department, and send a little note to say, hey, I know you're looking for a logistics manager in Ventura. I've just put together a cross-docking package where we put this new technology using A, B, and C together. I'd love to have a chance to chat with you about something. It seems like you're doing things like that. Now, all of a sudden, if you think that now the VP marketing might not get it, but you can send an email on LinkedIn and they very well might get it. But to me, I call that the back door. Use the job posting as a lead to a job, but do not apply. Going through the front door is the kiss of death, unless you know someone in the company. But I would try to use the back door, find a key, and you'll have a lot better luck. Spend more time looking at fewer jobs, 5 or 6. Do that. You will have interviews by the end of the month.
As I tell people on the candidate consulting side of the business that I do, focus on the people and the organizations, not on jobs.
Okay.
Right.
Let me answer
Build the
Lisa's.
relationships, right?
Okay.
Build the relationships with the people. And that's how you get in the door. Employer
Yep.
referrals is still one of the top
Well,
ways.
let me ask Lisa's question.
Yeah.
I'm sure she means policies.
Yes.
Now, this candidate who I talked to, the VP marketing, so we'll just have a conversation. She's not a serious candidate yet. You can have conversations with people without them applying for a job. On the other hand, if you said, now, Lisa, we want you to be a serious candidate, you will go through our application process. But you can have a pre-discussion to see if you're in the game. And if that's your process, you can have any process you want. It doesn't say, the process doesn't say I have to have an application. The law doesn't say that. Companies have implemented a stupid thing because they got thousands of people applying. They want to have some policing. But I can have a conversation with a candidate ahead of time and say, hey, Michael or Lisa, I got an interesting job. I'm not sure it's perfect for you. Let's see before we get too serious. You're allowed to have that conversation.
Yeah, I don't know. And if HR is preventing you from doing that, or if there are any HR people that are preventing their recruiters from doing that, be a little looser on that policy. Just don't forward the resume right away to say, look, if you're interested at the end of the conversation, yeah, I'm happy to have a conversation. If you're interested, apply. Let me know you've applied. I'll make sure your resume gets pulled. I mean, that's the way to do it, is you're building the relationships with,
Right.
the people you're trying to go work for.
This is where once you push the apply button, you've entered legal morass.
Right.
And so do not, if you're a candidate, do not press it. Figure out how do you, which is what Michael's saying, is don't go to the apply button. Yeah, the process is for a candidate to go from a candidate to an applicant. Yes, you have to finish the application process, but you can go bypass. You don't have to do that to start. Once you push the apply button, you're a candidate. And you have to go through the legalities of it. So to me, you've already set the stage. You're not going to get the job. Then you're going to complain, and then somebody's going to have some candy award to give. Hey, we're treating everybody properly. Well, the properly was you shouldn't let the person apply to begin with so easily. But that's a different issue.
Absolutely. All right. So I've got one more question here as we wrap up. So, we'll make it one question, but I'll wrap it up into 2 questions. I'll wrap it up into 1. So what are the 3 key areas that talent acquisition functions should be doing now to prepare for COVID? And what is the future of the workplace 1 to 3 years from now, or hell, even 5 to 10 years from now?
Well, I can't answer all those questions, but I can certainly say that if I was a recruiter, I would build and want to be a recruiter. I'd learn how to compress sourcing and recruiting together. I'd build a deep talent pool of candidates in a subspecialty area that you're really good at. It was the reason that this woman called me back was before I became a retained recruiter, I had spent 10 years placing accountants and financial managers into industry in Southern California, and half of those were in the entertainment industry. So that's where she knew me from. When I became a retained recruiter, it was more general. But so that's, to me, identify. So I build this deep pipeline. As important, I would also focus on being a true career advisor to my candidates and a true trusted advisor to my hiring managers. That means you need to be a good interviewer. You have to be able to set the stage. You have to be trusted by your candidates that you're doing the right thing. But most important of all is I don't let my candidates make short-term decisions using or long-term decisions using short-term data. Too many people focus on what they get on the start date, not the work they're going to be doing or what they could become. And to me, if you take a little bit less money, but a year from now, the rate of growth is significant, what you did on day one. And too many candidates look day one, apply, I need a job, too short-term thinking. So I think recruiters and candidates and hiring managers have got to take a long-term view. So that's how I see and that still can be done in today's environment, but there's too many other changes going on. Who knows what's going to happen?
Well, and that I think that's a great way to wrap things up here. So as you see across the scrolling bar that you can connect with Lou at louadler.com, and then you can go into the different connected websites that he has around performance-based hiring, diversity by design, or diversity hiring by design. So there's a lot here that
Sorry, guys.
I know, no, you're fine, that we've talked about, and that I think we've had some great questions, and I think the best way to look at all this is get back to basics, but just have a vision of where recruiting is going, where diversity is going, how diversity is going to play an important role in this space, and really around how you treat your candidates from start to finish. And I just love the idea about the having job descriptions that are, or job postings that are not just the run of the mill. Here's the responsibilities. Here's what here are the requirements for the job, because you really are cutting out a lot of people. And the purple unicorns, as I like to call them, the purple unicorn job description things have got to stop. So Lou, you've been a great guest. I really appreciate it. You guys need to definitely follow Lou. His courses are anywhere between 20 to $50. Some are even free, especially for job seekers. I believe there's how to prepare for interviews. I saw one this morning. Go out there and check out his site. He's got some great resources. And, I don't care if you're 74 or 54 or 104, Lou, you brought a lot to this industry, and there are a
104,
lot of people,
yet.
not yet, 30 years. If you're still doing this at 104, I'm having you back on the show,
God.
guaranteed. I'll be 84, but we'll have a conversation. So thank you again for all that you do for recruiting to make it a much better environment and a much better place to be in. And I hope everyone, and I know everyone, learned a lot today.
Great. Thank you very much, Michael. Good luck, everybody. We'll get through this together somehow. Be good.
Definitely. All right, Lou. Thanks.